Hummus is delicious as a dip, but sometimes you want something with more substance, and I've got just the right thing. This dish is Fattet Hummus. You can think of it as hummus's main meal cousin, which has more flavour and textures than regular hummus. Crispy fried bread is smothered in a yogurt hummus sauce, then topped with toasted pine nuts and paprika. It's simple to make, cheap and tasty, and best of all, you probably have all the ingredients already. If you're new here, I'm Obi, and today I'm going to show you how to make the perfect Fattet Hummus at home. Before we get started, I just wanted to thank every single one of you for getting us to 50,000 subscribers. It's always been a dream of mine to make these videos, and I'm so grateful for every single view, comment and share that you contribute. We'll be doing a Q&A video for our 50,000 subscribers special, so leave us any burning questions you have in the comments below, and we'll answer them in the video. Now, let's get started. First things first, let's define what a fatteh dish is. At its most basic, it's a dish that contains a layer of crispy bread that is usually softened with some sort of stock. It's a way of using up leftover flatbread that usually goes hard and crispy after a couple of days. My favourite dish in the entire world is Egyptian fatteh, and it's a fatteh dish that is made with rice and a tangy garlic vinegar sauce. We covered this on the channel a while back, and we also covered aubergine fatteh or fattet makdous, a dish that we make every other week because of how delicious and quick it is to make. Just like aubergine fatteh, Fattet Hummus is 100% vegetarian, and if you use a non-dairy yogurt, you can even make this vegan. To start, we'll prepare our hummus, and if you don't know, hummus is the Arabic word for both chickpeas and the chickpea dip that you know as hummus. To keep this recipe quick, we'll be using canned chickpeas for this dish. You can definitely soak dried chickpeas overnight, and you'll end up with an even better result, but these are much quicker to prepare. Drain your canned chickpeas from any liquid and then give them a very thorough wash. For this recipe I'll be using 450 grams or 1 pound of pre-cooked chickpeas, but I've doubled the recipe on camera. Place your washed chickpeas in a pot, then add in 1 teaspoon of salt, half a teaspoon of cumin and an optional teaspoon of Aleppo pepper flakes. Now pour in about 1.5 litres or quarts of water and turn the heat up to high. What we're doing is cooking the chickpeas a bit further to soften them up, and we're also giving them an opportunity to absorb the flavour of the spices. Bring the pot to a boil, then let it sit and boil for about 20 to 30 minutes. If you are using dried chickpeas instead, these need to be soaked overnight, then cooked for about 1 to 2 hours. While the chickpeas are boiling, it's the perfect time to prepare the bread. For this and any other fatteh dish, you'll need to get some form of pita bread. You can either use these big circular flat ones or the oval shaped ones that I used in my aubergine fatteh video. Personally, I prefer the oval ones because they are thicker and they stay crispier for longer. I couldn't find them in my store, and although I have a great recipe for them, the theme of this dish is to be quick. So I took 2 of these large circular pittas and cut them up into bite-sized chunks using a pair of kitchen scissors. If you are using the smaller size or oval pittas, you'll need 2 loaves for each of the larger ones. When I was done, I had a nice pile of bread that looked like this, and now you have a choice of how you want to cook them. The simple and healthier way is to place your pita on a baking sheet and pour over 1 tablespoon of olive oil. Add a 1/4 teaspoon of salt and 1/8 of a teaspoon of pepper, then mix this together thoroughly. Spread the pita pieces evenly over the tray, then place it into an oven preheated to 180 degrees Celsius or 360 degrees Fahrenheit to bake for 8 to 12 minutes. You can flip the bread halfway to get a more even colour, but once they are browned and crispy, they are ready to be used. The other way, which is much quicker, crispier and tastier, is to fry the bread. Pour enough vegetable oil into a pan or pot so that it's about 1 inch deep, and heat this on high heat. Once the oil is well heated, we can fry the bread, but first line a plate with a couple of paper towels so we can drain the bread on it. Turn the heat down to medium-high, then using a spider or something with a lot of draining holes, add in a handful of the bread. It will only take about 15 to 30 seconds for the bread to fry, and you want to make sure that all the pieces are sitting in the oil. Once they just start to turn brown, you'll need to fish these out of the oil really quickly. Place the fried bread onto the plate, and it will continue to brown while it drains. When done, you'll have a pile of fried bread that looks like this, and you can sprinkle this with a 1/4 teaspoon of salt and 1/8 of a teaspoon of pepper. There's one more thing you can do while boiling the chickpeas, and that's to toast 2 tablespoons of pine nuts. To do that, place half a tablespoon of clarified or regular butter in a pan and melt it completely. Next add in your pine nuts, and you'll cook these over medium-high heat for about 3 minutes, stirring the entire time. Of course you can toast these dry or without olive oil if you're looking to keep the dish vegan. Once they are a nice golden brown colour, remove these from the pan and pour them out over a paper towel to soak up all the extra butter. Let them drain fully, and when they cool they're ready to be used. Now back to the chickpeas. You'll know they're done cooking when they have a really soft texture. You should easily be able to crush them with your fingers, and their texture should be fluffy and creamy rather than hard or mushy. Drain the cooked chickpeas out into a bowl, and we'll be using both the chickpeas and the liquid that they were boiled in. To make the sauce, you can use either a food processor or blender, and maybe even an immersion blender. In the bowl, add 175 grams or 3/4 cup of thick Greek yogurt. Next, pour in 125 grams or 5 tablespoons of tahini, and I've got a video on how you can make this yourself. Add in 3 cloves of garlic, half a teaspoon of salt, and half a teaspoon of cumin. Next, pour in 3 tablespoons of freshly squeezed lemon juice, and follow that up with half of the chickpeas that you've prepared. Finally, add in 1 cup of the liquid the chickpeas were boiling in, and you're ready to blend this into a sauce. Your objective is to end up with a slightly runny pourable texture, kind of like an Alfredo or a thick gravy. If your sauce ends up really thick like this, then go ahead and add more liquid and process it once more. I let mine process for about 2 to 3 minutes, and if you have a high-powered blender, you should be able to get it extremely smooth. When I was done, here's what I was left with. The last thing you have to do is make the fatteh mix. This recipe will make about 3 servings of fatteh, and for a single serving place 1/3 of the toasted or fried bread in a large mixing bowl. To that add about 1/4 cup of the remaining chickpea liquid, and this will be the stock that softens the bread slightly. Add in half a clove of crushed garlic, then take 1/3 of the chickpeas and add half of them to the bowl. Set the other half aside, and this will go on top later. Mix the bread and the chickpeas together really well, then add in a few tablespoons of the hummus sauce. Mix this until well combined, then pour the mixture out into a serving bowl. Add some more of the remaining chickpeas, then pour over 1/3 of the remaining hummus sauce. Now quickly back to the stove and melt 1.5 tablespoons of clarified butter or regular butter, and then when it's absolutely boiling, pour 1/3 of it over your bowl. You can leave this out if needed, but it's part of the traditional recipe. I added the remaining chickpeas on top of the sauce, then I sprinkled on some of the toasted pine nuts. The last thing I did was to take some good old paprika and give it a shake over the entire dish. To break up the layers of beige, I added a small garnish of some chopped mint, and that's the Fattet Hummus done. This recipe is styled after the Fattet Hummus that is eaten for breakfast or lunch in Syria, but I think it makes a great dinner too. Now let's check out the taste test. Now I'm a huge fan of fatteh dishes, and I've got to say this one is definitely the most convenient one to make. You don't need any fancy ingredients, and with just a small amount of work you'll have a deliciously filling dish. The contrast of textures is great, and you've got loads of flavour coming through from the sauce and chickpeas. I hope you give this chickpea fatteh a try, and if you do, send me some photos on Instagram. As always, a big thank you to all of our patrons for making this video possible, and I'll be back soon with another recipe.